And we're joined in the studio by the Conservative Malcolm Rifkin. Thank you very much, Malcolm, for coming in.
Thank you very much.
I'm bound to ask you straight away about Scotland, if I may, and then I'll come to the wider UK picture. Your thoughts on what the SNP have achieved and where it leaves Scotland in the UK jigsaw?
Right. Obviously, they've had a stunning victory. It's a remarkable achievement, a historic achievement. So what I'm about to say isn't meant to detract from that. The fact is that their main appeal to the Scottish electorate was that this is nothing about independence. It's nothing about another referendum. We want you to vote for us because we too want a Labour government, but we'll be more effective in helping that Labour government. Now, actually, Ed Miliband was quite right when he said, if you're seduced by that argument, you will make it more likely that Cameron will end up in Downing Street. None of us expected the stunning victory that happened yesterday. But on that central objective that the SNP set themselves, they actually failed. Because they actually made it easier for the Conservatives to do what they have now achieved. And that was partly because every seat they won from Labour made it less likely that Labour could be the largest party. But there was an additional factor which I think explains what, at least in part, what happened yesterday. That over the last couple of weeks, the electorate in England and in Wales became more and more disturbed by the likelihood of instability of a nationalist party, not a Scottish party. It wasn't that they were Scottish, it was that they were nationalist against the continuation of the United Kingdom, nevertheless being used to prop up the party that would otherwise have lost the election. And I think that meant a significant move towards the Conservatives, either from people who might have voted UKIP or people who just hadn't made up their mind.
Andy? Well, when you're a journalist, you bumble around the streets and you walk around your local park, and people come up to you from time to time and say the same thing again and again and again. And I was really struck, once the Conservatives started to do that, watch the SNP message, by how many people of all sorts of backgrounds came up to me and said, I'm really worried about the Scottish National.
And there's a point worth making.
Really cut through.
When the Conservatives tried to suggest that Miliband couldn't be trusted on Trident because of what he'd done to his brother, that didn't sound like a real issue. That sounded like an invented issue. When they pointed to the implications for the stability of the United Kingdom as a whole of that kind of nationalist strategy, that's when people said, this is actually a real issue. We need to know about this, and we perhaps need to think how we react to it.
What are your thoughts on what this new government needs to do, the shape
on the Scottish aspect?
No, I'm talking now about Mr Cameron's new government, what it needs to do, the kind of message we heard from the Prime Minister earlier about being a one-nation Conservative.
Yes.
How does that translate in real terms?
Well, magnanimity in victory was Churchill's phrase, and that's, I'm sure, David Cameron's approach. Here we've suddenly got this stunning victory, more than even we expected or planned for. You have to realise it wasn't because of everyone loving the Conservatives or thinking we were the best thing since sliced bread or anything of that kind. There were a number of factors that have led to this. So you have to respect that. You also have to, I think, respect what the Nationalists have done in Scotland, because that too is a stunning victory. It's a political reality, and therefore, even if we fundamentally disagree with their ultimate objective, we have to accept that they have legitimacy. They have been elected like any other members of Parliament, and as long as they are prepared to accept the way the political system operates, then they are entitled to the same respect as anyone else.
Could I just jump in for a second? Because when I was a small boy, Malcolm Rifkin was putting together an earlier Tory version of devolution, as I recall, many, many years back. So I wonder what your thoughts are now about whether we're going to move to some kind of more federal UK, what's going to happen then?
It's a crunch question, and I think there's actually two routes that the government can choose. One is to say, well, we've already got devolution improvements that have been agreed, we're going to implement them, we'll be in the Queen's speech, and I'm sure that will happen. But the question is that enough? Because although the Nationalists are not entitled to claim that what happened yesterday was anything explicitly to do with independence or a need for a new referendum, the reality is their political authority as representing Scotland is much, much greater as a consequence of what has happened. And therefore we face the possible instability, not because of no majority government, but because of the very future of the United Kingdom now being a question mark to a much greater extent than it would otherwise have been. What that says to me is that what needs to be thought about, I mean, nothing should be announced today or even in the next few days, but what we need to start thinking about is a need for a new constitutional settlement, not just for Scotland versus Britain, but a constitutional settlement that actually would be acceptable and fair to all the four countries of the kingdom, Wales, England, Northern Ireland, as well as Scotland. And what that, in practice, I'm really saying is, what we need to think about is what used to be called a Royal Commission, but we don't have Royal Commissions now.
Constitutional convention?
Well, a convention, no, even that I'm not sure. You need, it's not something that need to take years. Somebody once said about Royal Commissions, they take minutes and last years. You don't want that. I think what needs to be thought about is saying, over the next year, we want people to put together a settlement. It would be a federal type of system, but one that would recognise that that will have to mean different powers in England, Wales and Northern Ireland compared to Scotland.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
Not at all.
Let's join Andrew, who has the... Well, we're going to join Andrew in a second. Andrew Neil has Grant Shapps with him, I think. Andrew?
I do indeed. We've moved